What does it take to unleash the power of the latent human mind? Hello and welcome to Insights to Live By. I am your host, Matt Zinmans. So grateful to have you here. Such an interesting guest, someone I've had the opportunity to get to know, a big fan of. She is an amplifier and actualizer of human potential and one of the world's foremost experts on subconscious biohacking. She is Tina Nomad Higgins. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Of course, of course. Now, I already know from our prior conversation, Nomad is not a given name, it's an earned name through your lifestyle. And I checked in Webster here. I want to make sure I got this right. It's just simply a person who moves from place to place rather than settling down and living one area. But what would your definition, like, what have you done to earn? Is it more than that you're rather than just going everywhere?
Well, I mean, I do kind of see myself as a global resident. At this point, I've lived in 10 countries. I've been to 60 plus, and I think it's important, especially with the work that I do and with the subconscious and working with a large population, to understand as much of a global perspective as possible instead of being rooted in one location and kind of only seeing life from that area. So for my purpose and my reason for being in this life, I feel like it's an essential part of it. But yeah, it does come from traveling so much, living all over the place. And, I've got a couple of home bases here and there, and those change, as time goes on. But that's my life, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Oh, awesome. Well, hey, I know that you have the foremost practice in San Diego, to begin with, and that you are often tailoring your expertise, not just to individuals and groups worldwide, but professional athletes, renowned musicians, millionaires, even billionaires. And so I imagine that takes you in different places. Is there any particular reason aside from the love of a global residency that you go by Nomad, or is your business just simply bringing you into these other areas? And if so, what's the focus there for you?
Well, I think even before the business, I mean, that was kind of it was in my blood, my DNA. I grew up listening to my grandmother tell stories and my mother tell stories of living around the world, and they lived in different countries most of their lives. And so I think, and because I moved so much as a child, I didn't have one place as a home base like so many people have, and so I didn't feel rooted to one place or tied to one place where all of my friends and family are there. So I think that, and once you start, man, I started traveling by myself when I was 18. I started backpacking alone when I was 20,
Wow.
and just going and seeing the world like that. And yeah, it's very addictive to just to really see things all over, and the new experiences and I mean, I always tell people explore and experience as much as possible in this life. This is what we've got,
Right.
so really live it consciously, as in making every opportunity and taking every opportunity that you can.
Right.
So, yeah, and I've tried to do that to the best of my abilities.
I'm sure it happens naturally, Nomad. And you told me the other day, so you can just call me Nomad. So that's what
Yeah,
we'll go with here. And
sure.
also, I'm so psyched, and the human connectivity that you had mentioned to me that Dubai is one of the areas on which you're planning on focusing. Dave Crane, a former show guest, one of my favorite people, has become a friend. We're going to get the two of you together to see what comes of
Yeah,
it.
that'd be great. Saudi
Yeah,
Arabia and Dubai are recent businesses this past year that I've just started. I've got clients in Dubai already, starting business in Saudi Arabia. I've got clients there. So it's an exciting region to be in for
yeah,
sure.
for
And I look
sure.
forward to meeting him.
Of course, yeah, he's a rock star.
Yeah.
As my listeners all already know, and if you don't, go back and listen to Dave's episode. It's pretty good. Okay, so I'm really interested, as I'm sure everyone else is, and one of the reasons why this I'm so drawn to this topic and you is I don't really know much about it. I think that uh, people think of the subconscious as something over there. I'm just going to make a blanket statement here, or, I had this dream, or, whatever that may be. And it almost may feel like it's out of reach or that it's not controllable in any way. So just by the name, when I hear biohacking, there's an intentionality around what it is that you do and how you do it in order to have the subconscious, turn that into an advantage through that reprogramming. How'd I do? Does that sound
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. I mean, my background happens to be in psychology, and I came through that, and I was a counselor for a while. And my frustration, started. I was living in Japan. I left the field because for me, it was kind of a depressing field to be in, and to hear and deal with so much negative and not often get to see the positive. And so I left that for a while, went into education. And I was living in Japan. I was there for about 9 years. And towards the end of my time there, I started to really research, why is it that people, including myself, can spend months and years of their lives in traditional talk therapy, and they can understand pretty well the what, the when, the where, the why of all of their issues and where they come from. But why is that awareness? I mean, awareness is important. So, talk therapy has an important role, but why is that awareness not enough to shift things? At why is that
Right.
not making the changes at the behavior and emotional level? And so that's when I started to research the subconscious a bit more. And I looked at the subconscious, and I'm like, oh, well, the reason why is that all of our programming is at the subconscious level. Our beliefs, our bodies programmed, everything there. It is like the biggest supercomputer that is known to humankind, but it's in our own mind, and it's the most underutilized tool that we have today.
Sure.
And the
Now,
research backs this up.
if I understand you correctly, Nomad, people who naturally, when it comes to a topic like this, have to be very self-dedicated to really want to drill that deeply into being the best version of themselves. And if we look at, say, those who are in conventional talk therapy, and they've already done the inner work around their self identity and all the things that I don't
And the
think anybody needs
awareness.
to, the awareness, right? All of that ground level inner work, and then they kind of plateau. It's like I know who I am, I know my why, and they get to that place. What comes next? So, is that somewhat of a natural progression where someone really has that foundation?
Well,
And
I don't even know that it needs, such a foundation in traditional, therapy. I think what it really needs is some base level awareness that there is negative emotion or negative emotions that I keep experiencing whenever this situation happens. It could be a fear, it could be a phobia, it could be unexplained anger, it could be anxiety, it could be depression. Like, why am I experiencing these things? I'm trying to do these things to resolve it. I'm doing all the things that are recommended, and it's not resolving it. Or, no matter what I do, or, I had a client just the other day tell me, my husband tells me all the time that he loves me, but I just tell him I don't believe him. and
wow,
and it's because, when you don't have that self belief in yourself, then, whatever anybody else says. And so I think it's having the base level of awareness that I believe some things about myself or others that aren't very helpful, and I don't know how to change that. I wish I could think it differently. But just by wishing it that way, it's not happening. I wish I didn't react this way every time the situation happened. So I think it's just that little bit of a basic awareness is pretty much all it takes. Because then once you start working with the subconscious, the awareness kicks in, in overdrive. So just having something like, I'm not satisfied with this. If this weren't there, then I would be tapping into my potential on a much bigger level. I'd be more successful in my business, my relationships, my whatever, if I didn't have this blocking me, because I know what I'm really capable of, but this is kind of stopping me. Or these things, if we're truly honest, it's never one thing,
well,
if
that
that
makes
makes
that
sense.
makes well perfect sense. And to continue to get our arms around this, I know for one, we are going to get to the practical level of what listeners here might be able to do to start head in a more positive direction around unleashing the power of the latent human mind as the lead-in question. But let's talk about maybe some cases of what a client comes to you for. You already mentioned a number of those areas and how you might have worked with them on these more common needs in order to biohack and progress. So can we do that?
Well, yeah, I'll definitely do that. But before I do that, I'd like just to give the listener just a tiny bit of a um of what the subconscious is and how it gets
Oh,
programmed initially.
you
And
know,
so
you should
then
be in my
that
chair because I should have been asking that question. Thank
no,
you,
I
Amanda.
mean, but you know, it's not intuitive. So
Right.
most people don't kind of look at the subconscious. The way I look at the subconscious is as a computer. Okay, so if we think of it as a piece of technology, then it's programmed, right? It got programmed. And for most of us and everybody that's listening here, your initial programming happened between the ages of 0 and 11. And so that is not something that we decide what programming is coming in. It's coming in from what's around us with the authority figures in our lives, the peer groups, any traumatic events, repetition of things. And so that we're taking in that initial programming and we're programming our computer without even realizing it. So the
Hmm.
child is deciding, I'm this, the world's this, men are this, women are this, you know, making all kinds of belief systems about things based on that time. And it doesn't necessarily correlate with a good or bad upbringing. It really correlates with how the child perceived things and kind of translated that in their
Hmm.
mind. So you can have two children who went through the same thing, but they can have different interpretations on what those things meant to them. And so barring traumatic events outside of that period of 0 and 11, what happens is most everybody, because they don't understand that this is a reprogrammable tool, just like any piece of technology,
Hmm.
and can and should be upgraded on a regular basis. What then happens is most people are operating on that programming from the ages of 0 and 11 to 11, barring traumatic events outside of that, for the rest of their lives. So it's
Hmm.
kind of like everybody's walking around on like DOS 0.2.
Yeah,
And
their
so
operating system is there, needs upgrading.
and needs serious upgrading. And we spend so much time and energy and money on resources upgrading every piece of actual technology we have in our possession, our phones, our laptops, everything that we've got. But we forget that this one, and most people, it's not even forgetting, they're just unaware. Like that, this is a reprogrammable tool that we can actually just go in and say, okay, we want it to remove these things. And then, you know, from every level. And that's why, you know, my business is so successful, is because we really go after removing these limiting programmings from every level possible, from the conscious, the subconscious, the neurological levels, the nervous system, the cellular memory, like the DNA, the RNA, every level. And we don't do it, the subconscious does it. And you know, you may be like, oh my goodness, well, it's really not that possible. Well, the proof is in the proof.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so
I mean,
the evidence speaks for itself. And so that's the accelerators my clients do, is they write down every day what are the positive differences that are happening in my thoughts, feelings, actions, or responses. And that evidence is the proof that, yeah, the subconscious is actually that powerful and it's doing everything we asked for and then some. And so then once we remove that negative programming, then we get to put in what we want. So instead of like the client I mentioned that, you know, didn't believe, you know, believes that she's not lovable, then we can put in, I am loved and lovable. And so once you put those, you change those root beliefs and programming to something that's really positive, that changes everything from there on out. The ripple effect happens, and that changes your emotions, your behavior, your results. Everything changes just because that root programming, those limiting, the new beliefs are positive, the new programming in the body and the mind is positive. And this works for anything. It works for emotions, it works for limiting beliefs, it works for physiological issues. And so, yes, then I can get into, you know, a couple of examples. I mean, at this point, I've had thousands of clients.
sure.
Like I mentioned, I started, like you mentioned, I started in San Diego. I quickly became the top there with international clinical hypnotherapy, and then I switched over to international and now have you know, so I'm a subconscious biohacker, and that's my business name. But starting there in San Diego, I mean, they, you know, they made me the top of that field really quickly. And, you know, I see a lot of things. I don't specialize in anything, one thing. I specialize in the subconscious. And so at this point in time, I would say probably the most common things that people are coming with, unfortunately, nowadays is anxiety. And so,
Right.
and I can use a really recent experience with a current client that I've got, young, about 20 years old, female. We'll call her Jenny.
Before we jump into the case study, just because you covered such an important area
Sure.
just now, number one, I think it's important to track the data the way that you described, because I'm sure your clients want that. And it's also in terms of the thriving practice, it's because you know what you're doing and you have the results to prove it. I think
Yeah.
that many of us, we don't necessarily think of what you just described. Yeah, when I was, 0 to 11, I've got this operating system, and I hear what you're saying, qualifying, barring
Being
trauma.
programmed by default.
Right,
Yeah.
that's something different. But we'd like to think that we have control. We know we don't have full control or control over the things that happen to us, but the subconscious is like this whole other area where we don't have control, that we don't even maybe don't even think about per se as something that we can biohack in general. And I don't know that people realize how much the subconscious, if you have more to say on this, is really driving our behaviors
It
and
controls
and
everything,
our experiences.
everything, a hundred
Everything.
percent of everything. The
Well,
conscious mind has very little. It's got your logic, your rationale, things like that. But everything else is in the subconscious. But that said, they do work together. So if the conscious isn't giving full permission, and all parts of us are not giving full permission to the subconscious to make the changes that we want it to make, then it can't do that. It doesn't matter how powerful it is or how successful my techniques are, if the person is not giving the permission. So there is this kind of, I kind of compare it to, so you've got this computer, and obviously we don't have a keyboard to this computer, right?
yeah.
So imagination is really the keyboard to this computer.
Hmm.
When we imagine things, it's telling the subconscious what we want it to do, even if it's fantastic imaginations. Like I had a client that got hit by a car crossing the road,
Hmm.
and he fractured his leg in all kinds of places, screws all down the leg and everything. And so he'd been a previous client of mine, so he came for the trauma and for accelerated healing. And so after we did the work, I had him practice the imagination. He decided that there were little gnomes in there repairing all the damage. Little gnomes. I thought they were dwarves all this time, but they were gnomes. I just talked to him recently, and so he would imagine that. He would imagine it if he got up to go to the bathroom at night. He would imagine it all through the day, and the thing is, it doesn't matter what we're imagining because the subconscious controls it all. It knows how to do it. I don't know how to use this computer. I mean, I don't know. I know how to use the computer, but do I know how it's working inside? No, I'm not really that tech savvy. I
Sure.
don't know what it's doing to make me talk to you today, to type on it, and it's like magically doing things because I've typed on this thing. It's the same thing with the imagination. You're imagining, like we did with him, we removed the negative programming standing in the way from his healing, and then now he's just imagining that these little gnomes are in there repairing the damage. And so then he calls me up and he says, "Well, the strangest thing happened the other night. I was telling them to get back to work after I used the restroom, and they threw up their hands and they said, 'Well, but we're done. We could use some magic, but we're done.'" And he's like, "Well, I thought that was the weirdest response ever." And he had an appointment to go get another imaging test 2 days later. So he went into the doctor, did another imaging test, and they couldn't find any evidence of the fractures at all. The
Really?
doctor said that they had never seen anything heal so fast, and this was after his little gnomes in there had thrown up their hands and said, "Well, we're done." So my point is, it doesn't matter how fantastical it is, but the reason that it works is we remove the negative programming first and the limiting stuff that's standing in the way. Because if you have the belief that I can't heal, or my subconscious really isn't that powerful, then that's going to create your experience. So we got to remove all of the limiting things that are in there first, and then the imagination can kick in and say, "Okay, I've got these." There was another client who had little tiny angels with golden needles sewing things up, and her eye actually went back in the socket. I
Huh.
mean, so it doesn't matter what it is, but the imagination is kind of the programming language to it.
Yeah,
So
I like the word fantastical, by the way. I haven't heard
yeah.
that. And I feel like
I
I
have
should
I have a Nomad dictionary,
you have
so
a
some
nomad
things are
dictionary.
are straight from there, some things that you can't really find in Webster.
I mean, there are a lot of cases that are on record that are speak to the mind and the body healing.
Absolutely.
I
The
do feel
American
like I
Medical
need to,
Association and the British Medical Association have done a lot.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it does prove it.
yeah. I mean, I can insert a disclaimer. Results may vary if that's a fair thing to do.
Though these studies like the American Medical Association and the American British Medical Association and the American Psychological Association have actually done clinical trials. So
Hmm.
when we say results may vary, it's varying but within a statistical probability. So when we're saying that, so let's say the example of a mastectomy that the AMA did, the American Medical Association, and clients that did let's say, work with the subconscious or hypnotherapy before they had the mastectomy compared to the patients that didn't. Now, the statistics show that the ones who did needed less anesthesia. They dropped to the state faster.
Hmm.
They had less side effects coming out. They needed less medication, and they left the hospital an average of a day and a half earlier. So while results may vary, that was a high percentage, way more than the people that did nothing. And I would say in my practice, it's the same, which is why I have people look for the evidence. So at this point, I can
Right.
say with pretty much certainty that for almost any issue that people throw at me from the average functioning person, I have about a 95% success rate between 1 and 6 sessions.
Hmm.
That's a month to a month and a half for almost anything that you can name: anxiety, depression, fears, traumas, phobias, addictions, weight loss, and even some medical issues and so on.
That's
And
amazing.
so results may vary, yes, but if people see it through and they have the patience, then yes, the statistics do speak for themselves.
Well, everyone's so different to begin with, but everyone has a baseline of
Yeah.
where they are with whatever's going on
And
for
there's a
them. And
baseline with the subconscious as
yeah,
well. So if
right,
you give
right.
permission, we know what it can do. So yeah.
And how do you move that needle and you track it, which is interesting. Very interesting how quickly you're describing, it goes from A to desired B. Now, I do want to get back to the case studies. The very interesting, the young woman you were speaking to about anxiety, and
Hmm.
maybe another example or two, just to help us bring this to life. So I'll let you go to that.
Yeah, I bring up anxiety because it seems to be something that so many people are experiencing. I get clients all the time who have been hospitalized because they thought they had a heart attack and it was actually panic attack. People that can't leave their homes or having panic attacks on a regular basis. And I get that quite a bit. People that are on medication and they don't want to be anymore. And so, and I'll use her as, as an example because she's a recent client, and she came in because recently she's been pretty housebound. She didn't want to leave. She's young, energetic, in early 20s, and just not leaving the house and in a constant state of anxiety,
Hmm.
seeing therapists all the time, and just not sure what else to do. Um,
Common, very
yes,
common
yes,
with Gen
exactly.
Z. Yeah. Hmm.
And yeah, I've had a lot for between, even from between ages 18 to 25. But this seems to hit all the ages.
Yeah.
But yeah, so after the first session, which is really an introductory to get you used to interacting with your subconscious and getting responses from it, and we did some little movement, she actually left her house multiple times. She went out, she stayed locations longer. After the second session, more. After the third session, she's like, anxiety is great. Now let's focus on social anxiety. And some people don't see a distinction, but there is a
Oh,
distinction. Some
big.
people have generalized anxiety. And she's like, okay, my anxiety is good. So now let's just focus on the social anxiety when I'm around bigger groups of people and stuff, because I'm not having a problem leaving the house anymore. I'm not having a problem going out and talking to friends and being there and even interacting with exes that I normally would have just fled the scene. And that is now after 3 sessions. And so, but the first session, she was already leaving the house. And so, I mean, and that just gives an idea. So, the next session that we're going to do, actually later today, will be on social anxiety. And I would expect after that she's going to have the same results and be able to be in larger groups of people without any issue. And if there is still anything, then we go after it, because I like to be very thorough. To me, it's all about the results. So we want 100%, like, I'm comfortable in all of these scenarios now.
For
And
sure.
so, but I don't see, her being able to needing to go past, 6 sessions, if that, to deal with both anxiety and social anxiety.
That has to be
And
so
that's
gratifying for you.
very rewarding. I mean, I've never done anything more rewarding in my life. And no matter how much my business grows and I'm, creating apps and audios, and, the one-on-one client thing it's still such, to see people really get into the control seat of their lives for probably the first time ever. Before that, most people are kind of just running dictated on their programming. They're just, I feel this way in these situations and I think this, and it's just kind of, they're going with the programming, versus now I get to be in the driver's seat of my life for the first time. And it's such a cool and rewarding thing to see.
Right. And obviously so tangible in
Yeah.
that way. I wish we all
Yeah.
had jobs that
I
showed us those kinds of
I know.
results.
I get to see positive results every day. I wouldn't change it for anything.
Awesome. Now, you mentioned something to me I thought was also interesting about a case involving video game addiction. And I
Hmm.
think there's a lot of that. All right, I'm speaking from personal experience. We have teenagers, others that we're well aware of in the family who are really on I won't name the game, a lot, a lot, a lot. And they're missing out on life, and it really is an addiction. And so I'm curious about how you approach that.
Well, I mean, I approach it like I do any addiction, and I work with any kind of addiction from smoking to alcohol, cocaine, social media addiction. That's a big one that people are coming now,
Huh.
addictions to their phone, video games. And this particular client, he did not come to me for that. He came to me for anxiety. And he had a young family, he had child and wife, and he wasn't leaving the house. And after we did maybe 2 sessions, it turns out then it comes up that he's got this video game addiction.
Hmm.
And this is another reason that he's not leaving the house and having anxiety, right? And so, but the most important thing to realize with addictions is, you really can't address it if you're not wanting to. If you don't have a high desire that you don't want this anymore, that you don't want to be a smoker, that it's not serving you, that you don't want to just sit inside and lose all this time with your family and your friends and the outdoors, that this is really harming your life. If you don't really want that, then it's not going to work. You can't just like, I had, a guy come in and, well, my wife sent me here to quit smoking. I'm like, I'll take your money, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to work, because you have to have that desire. And unlike any other issue, it has to be really high, like 8, 9, 10. If you're not there, then we can work on why you're not there. So for him, he was a challenging case. I mean, this was a heavy duty thing where he would go
Sure.
all day long between phone and video games. And
Yep.
it was from YouTube videos to video games, the whole thing. And so after we did a full, we really went in and broke all the associations and pulled out the limiting programming, with this addiction. And I'm like, all right, so let's see about getting rid of that console, and let's, giving it to someone, right?
Wow.
Well, he
That's
went into,
extreme.
yeah, yeah. Well, he went into panic mode, and before he came in for the next session, he almost didn't come in. He almost didn't come in, and I do my stuff virtually, so I say come in. He almost didn't join on Zoom. He's like, I'm not feeling very well today. I'm like, do it. I'm like, just get there and let's see what's going on, because the resistance tells me exactly what's going on, because the resistance means there's a resistant part in us that's just not wanting to let go. And usually that resistance comes from a part that's a lot younger than us and never really grew up. So it's thinking that it's holding on to something because it's giving us something positive. It's giving us fun. It's protecting us, or whatever it thinks it's doing. It's not trying to harm us, but it's outdated and it doesn't have the full awareness of us at our current age. And so he did the courageous thing and came to the session anyways. And we joined on Zoom, and he didn't want to be there, but he's like, I just feel this way and I feel really resistant to this. I said, do you still want to quit though? He says, yes. I said, all right, so then let's go after it. We went after it. We dealt with the resistance that was standing in the way. He immediately got rid of the console, gifted it to his cousin, was completely free, spending time with his family. And that was like 2 sessions that we did on that addiction. And so, but I was very proud of him for sticking it through, because if you don't stick it through, then it's not going to work. So the person's got to, put in their due diligence and say, no, I still want to do this, even though it's, it feels hard right now. And I'm not worried about if it feels hard, because I know that once we clear that resistance, it's going to be easy. So, the people that come in, even when they're feeling that, that's the ones that see that shift really quickly. And so he was free. They've moved. They're living a better life, and completely new life opened up. Imagine his family now spending that time, playing games with his family and doing board games and things outside. I mean, it's opened up a whole new world. And so, I'm happy to be a part of that.
Yeah, I can so relate, and certainly, addictions being different colors of the same rainbow on one side, and the thing with video games to me is that it's not as overt. You don't think of it as being so harmful to your health or classified as an addiction, and you get the dopamine rushes and the way those games are built. And the question of, where quote unquote real life is, wow, what's better than playing a video game? Why would I do that? If I can do this, because this is so amazing. It just takes you to a whole different level. And I know I speak to a certain mantra around this that came up about, few good things happen by themselves. If you're gonna sit and just play video games all the time, I sound like a dad here, where this is coming from. And you're not going to meet that person. You're not going to have that experience. What do you do
Yeah.
to balance it out? But the challenge
Hmm.
with addiction, from what I'm hearing you describe as a traditional addiction, is you've got to go cold turkey. It's not a matter of just cutting back to 2 hours. Is that right? You have
Well,
to.
I mean, yes and no.
It's like,
I
well, I'm
mean,
only going to smoke a 1 pack and still like 10.
well,
It's
there are,
five or
believe it
yeah.
or not, there are people who come to me, especially for alcohol, not the smoking, but for
Right, right,
alcohol,
right.
people come to me. I'd still like to be able to socially drink, but I don't want to.
Yeah, you don't want to
And
obliterate yourself.
right.
Yeah.
And so I have had success with that. Usually they lose the desire for it, and they usually kind of stop almost anyways. And so there are people that don't want to just like completely quit, but they want to lose that because there's an
That
association
lack
that's
of
created.
control, the
Yeah,
binge.
then
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the subconscious is an association making mechanism. And that's what it does. It creates associations with us. And this is why, fears and phobias are, a thing that I deal with quite a bit. Once it creates an association that, I don't, and it may not be from anything that we even remember, like flying's dangerous or elevators are dangerous. And we not even have like, where did that come from? As well as with the, the addictions and the video games, like, oh, this gives me this. Well, once you break those associations at the subconscious level, which I have a very effective technique to break it, and you break the association, in this case, all the times that you felt good, all the times that you used it to avoid things or to quash negative emotions, all the times that you got that kick out of it. Once you break that association and remove that, it brings it to this neutrality
Hmm.
that it kind of is like a more take it or leave it type of state. And so there are people that I would say are air quotes, addictive personalities, and I wouldn't recommend this way of going because they kind
Right,
of just they do everything to the extreme and they don't have that balance. But I
right,
do have clients that, there's a lot of people that aren't like that. And so once you break that association of it being pleasurable, of it being an escapism, of it, once you break that association, you take the brain and you remove it from all of those dopamine kicks and all of that,
right.
then it doesn't feel the same.
Hmm.
And so people are able to then take it or leave it with the I can have a glass of wine with dinner, but I don't need to have the whole bottle. I in that type of thing. I can play a video game with my friends, but then I'm also going outside and enjoying, and it's no longer this is the end all thing.
Yeah, I could see the distinction. I mean, certainly it's understandable. Certain people are just straight up wired as addicts, and they have limitations around some of the things that you're describing,
Hmm.
versus those who may be more in behavioral or self-destructive behavior, that sort of
Hmm.
thing. And that makes perfect sense to me. Before we move on to our next segment, I want to make sure that we're complete. I also want to make sure that we talk for a few minutes about the practical, the ground level. And I was trying to think of an example. How can I be selfish? That's where I'm going here. I know a lot of people and what it is that I do in and around public speaking have that fear. Certainly, it's one of those things where there's the one side of it where it's about practicing because you have to get your reps in order to get more comfortable no matter what.
Hmm.
But there's
Yeah.
this other dimension, right? And I'm bringing it up also in knowing, and I think it's a common knowledge that public speaking is maybe one of the greatest fears, phobias for many, many people,
Yeah.
that prevents them from doing it,
I've
and
had
it holds
hundreds
people,
and hundreds of
right?
sessions based
Yeah, it
on
holds
that for
people
sure.
back. So I recognize that you do what you do, and there are limitations to what people can do for themselves in the absence of having professional biohacking sessions. Is there such a thing as someone doing a little bit of self-hacking along these lines, or not?
Um, Well,
Like,
so with fears and phobias, like when people have a real like public speaking thing, and I just I had a recent client. in Saudi Arabia. I also had, an NFL Hall of Famer. He's left a public review, so I can use his name, Dermontti Dawson, who came to me. Because he's retired as a player, but he goes around and speaks to all the NFL players,
Sure.
and a lot of people, they get clammy, and they can't, like, what language am I speaking in? I don't know what I'm saying, and, like, they're just completely terrified in the whole thing. Besides just a little healthy nervousness, and again, like I'm mentioning, what happens with these fears and phobias is that the subconscious has created an association, and once it's created that association, it will continue to replicate that experience in every similar situation forevermore, and often it will compound, because that association has been created at the subconscious level. So if you're going to ask me, I'm going to say, for this issue, the easiest thing to do is to break that association at the subconscious level. And I don't currently know any quick hacks to do that, but I will say it's one of the fastest things that I deal with, because fears and phobias don't generally come with all kinds of limiting beliefs and programming and all of that other stuff.
Right.
It's generally purely association based. So once you break that association, it clears it. So I would say for fears and phobias, I would say in generally between 1 and 3 sessions. It's an incredibly fast process, and that opens the person up. I mean, people can go to, Yelp International Clinic Hypnotherapy, and Google, and you can read, for example, Dermontti Dawson's review.
Hmm.
But to answer that, there are some things that I think you can do self hacks for, but for those types of things, for me personally, even if I were dealing with it, I would go get a session from my business partner and mentor, because the easiest thing to do is to upgrade the subconscious with that.
Right.
But
Well, that
it's
makes sense. I
fast.
mean,
It's fast and effective. And so, because it removes that association completely, instead of just like wishing it away or practicing, you can do it with tons and tons and tons and tons of repetition. But, it trying to override and recreate it. But I just prefer, doing a faster one. So I
here's
wish I
a
could give you a faster hack. If I had one, I'd tell you.
all right. I tried, Nomad. I tried. They have these physiological responses too, and I'm speaking from experience. Like, I'll confess, like my upper lip, I get sweaty in my upper lip.
Yep.
I don't
Hearts,
know.
hearts pounding,
Uh,
hands are clam. Yep.
yeah, I
Pe-
mean, I'm okay with just about everything else.
Okay.
But for whatever reason, my upper lip sweats, and it's embarrassing. And I don't know what to do about it. But is there a hack for that?
Um, what for the upper lip
The upper
sweating?
lip sweat. Is there a hack for that? I
I
can't do
mean,
it
are are
myself, but
are you actually feeling nervous when you're speaking in front of people, when your lip is sweating?
I don't really tune into an over sense of nervousness. There's nothing crippling about it. I'm in my
So you
zone.
you
I
don't
know what
you
I'm
don't you
speaking
don't
to.
have that, like, that kind of panic a lot of people do.
Yeah,
Well,
I
if
mean,
that's the if
I
that's
mean,
the situation, then what I might encourage you to do, if you're not having all of those negative associations with it, then I would try pure imagination, and I would do it repetitively. And this is what a lot of, pro athletes and stuff do as well. So once you've removed that, imagining over and over and over again the ideal way of you presenting, how cool, using words like this, and cool and calm and collected, and, your face and everything else, and just imagining it, feeling it, and having that experience. And that, again, it's telling your subconscious what you want to experience by imagining it. And especially if you do it right as you're falling asleep and before you even open your eyes in the morning, because that's going directly into the subconscious, and it's directing it. It's saying, this is what I want.
that's
And so
good. I
the
mean, I
more
do
the
process in my sleep. I feel
but the more you do that intentionally, like, this is the experience I want. I want to be cool and calm and collected, and you
sure.
see it and you feel it and you experience it, and you repetitively do it, then that has every possibility of giving you the experience that you want
Got it. Yeah,
without having to do anything.
I won't
Yeah.
put myself out as not entire, not nervous at all. I mean, I've only been on so many stages, right? If I get on big stages, big audiences, believe me, my heart will be pounding. So,
Well, and I think there's a healthy nervousness, but when the people that I get, like this current, like the Saudi client, didn't even know what language she was speaking in. You're just like terrified, like an absolute terror. They're clammy. They're thinking they're about to panic. They have no idea what they're saying. They're not cognizant of what's going on.
hmm,
Completely in a fight or flight state. And so that's, that's different. I think anybody, once you get up there, even Tony Robbins I mean, there's a healthy bit of like
Sure.
adrenaline
Yeah, you
that pumps
channel it.
into you.
Yeah,
But the
yeah.
adrenaline versus pure fear are two different things,
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
I
that's
can
the
distinguish.
clients that I get. They're experiencing, sometimes panic, sometimes just fear, but usually it's the full on fight or flight kind of
Right.
physiological responses. And it really, because when you're in fight or flight, then it's drained all of your blood from your higher functioning, your digestion, everything else, and pumped it into your outer extremities so that you can fight or flee. And
Hmm.
so you can't think clearly. You can't process what's going on because you don't have the blood flow going to your brain. And so if you're in that state while you're speaking, then obviously you're not getting your full awareness from what you're talking about, like what we're talking right now.
Right.
So those type of people, then yes, but once you remove that fear, yeah, I think healthy nervousness is part of it. I mean, you're getting in front of a big crowd of people. I mean, there's going to be some adrenaline going,
Yeah.
but that's different, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Now, before we move on to the next segment, I want to make sure that we're complete. I feel like we've covered some wonderful ground. Is there any aspect to subconscious biohacking that you feel we just missed in our conversation, or do you feel like we've been pretty complete? We can talk more at the end a little bit, but I just want to make sure that while we're on topic, I didn't miss anything with you.
Well, I mean, I think the most important thing to realize is that, there are some core identity-based negative limiting beliefs that every single person has, whether we want to know that they're there or not, or whether we're even consciously aware that they're there or not. And those beliefs, and nobody is, there's nobody that doesn't have them. And those beliefs will seriously be dictating everything about you. And some of the most common of those are, I'm not good enough. I'm unlovable. I'm not smart enough, or I'm not smart, or I'm stupid. And so when people have, and I mean, there's a number of other, and these are specifically identity based ones. But when you have those, then what happens is that everything comes from that. So, we'll take the I'm stupid. So if someone has that at the core level,
Right.
you'll get a compensation for that. And you'll get a compensation, and even the person may not think that they believe that about themselves. Maybe the evidence proves otherwise, but either there'll be an undercompensation or an overcompensation to prove, yes, I am smart. And so now you've got the overachiever who's got to be the best at everything, or they don't even ever want to volunteer. They don't want to raise their hands. They don't want to speak out. So they don't want everybody's going to know I'm stupid, and so on. The I'm not good enough is probably the most common one. I'm not lovable is another pretty, or I'm unlovable.
Right.
These are pretty common, but addressing those changes everything about your life. It
Hmm.
changes everything. And the reality is that this is such a powerful tool. It doesn't take a lot to give it the upgrade. It is so powerful and so capable that your potential really is that close from where you are right now.
Right.
You just have to want it to be different and then take some action towards doing that. But this is that powerful of a tool. So even though people are like, oh, I've suffered with this crippling, anxiety, fear, phobia, whatever it is, depression for 25, 30 years, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how long you've had it. The subconscious is that powerful that any of those things, like I'm saying, within, a few sessions or a month and a half, it's completely resolved because it can reprogram all of that. It doesn't take the same amount of time to get it out as it took to reinforce it in your life. So there's plenty of hope available. And I would just encourage the listener to start to become aware of where their negative behaviors and emotions, where is that coming from? What is the underlying belief that's making those things a reality? Why am I behaving this way? Why am I feeling like this? Where is that coming from? Oh, okay, because I actually think this, and so I'm compensating, or I think this about people. And so yeah, the awareness is the first key step, to start to become aware of your existence and why things are happening, and then do something about it.
Yeah, right. I mean, beyond awareness, there comes self-devotion. You have the video gamer who just wants to get away from it, and they're stuck. And then you got people who may feel like, I'm in a pretty good place, but I really want to feel more confident, or I feel like maybe I'm self-sabotaging, or I have maybe a money block. All these different kinds
Yeah.
of things that are, they're right there and they're so subtle. It's easy not to tune into them, but if you have them, this is the sort of thing that's going to help open those doors and help people be their best selves. So thank you for going that next length with me. We're going to go into a segment here. I don't know if you know about the Wheel of Insights. Did I tell you about the Wheel of Insights? I have now on the screen, as you see, a wheel about Nomad. We're going to spin
Oh,
this, and we're random. There are a couple things on here that are specific to you. You're the guest. If you get one that you'd like to pass on, you can. I never have the same thing on the wheel. You're going to be the only one to answer these questions. And here we go.
exciting. I didn't know we were playing a game. This looks exciting.
Well, this is just a couple ways to get to know you just a little bit. So one here is what few people know. You want to answer that one, or we can punt. What do you say?
What few people know, as in,
Something about you that few people know. You have a
oh, something
certain,
about me
yeah,
that
you
few
have, yeah,
people
this is
know.
about you. You have a certain talent.
Okay.
Maybe no one knows that you play the saxophone or, something like that. Or we can jump to the next question. It's your
I
call.
mean, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of, most people know that, I'm
All
multilingual.
right. All right. We're
But I
moving
am I
on.
am a musician. Most
You're a
people don't know
musician.
I'm a musician. I do play the piano, and I played music is the first language I ever read. Actually started reading and playing piano before I was even in school.
Good one. Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. Now, we are fortunate enough to hit the next one, which is straight up on the wheel for you. The question is, hack your own mind? How? So if you were going to hack your own mind, if you were your own client, Nomad, is this a fair question? Again, you can pass on this. What would you want to hack? It's a little personal.
So as in, like, what issue would I want to focus on?
Yeah, if you were you, yes. And you wanted to go focus on, because we can always
Well,
be
I
better.
mean, I am doing sessions all throughout. I mean, I think that there's room for improvement always. I mean, growth is the number one most important thing to me. So I'm doing sessions all the time. I actually have a session booked for tomorrow. And I think that what I'm going to focus on for that session is that I thought I dealt with most of it, but I still think that there are some aspects of self-sabotage that I'm engaging in, and I'd like to clear all of that. So even though I've dealt with self-sabotage in the past, I'd like to really go after removing all aspects of it. And so that's what I'm going to address tomorrow.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
Mhm.
being a little vulnerable with me and us.
Oh,
Well,
I'm always willing to be vulnerable. That's part of it.
of course. Now, we are heading to our next featured segment. People might know it as Insights to Live By. There are 3 life lessons that you are bringing into the conversation. They don't necessarily have to do with anything that you do professionally. It just might be life lessons that you find yourself giving to others or passed on to you by a family member or a mentor. You get the idea. Now, Nomad, what is your first insight to live by?
Well, I already mentioned one, and
Okay,
explore and experience
you
and
can,
do and see as much as possible in this life, is this is what we know we have, so make the most out of it.
yeah,
Um,
good one to reiterate.
mhm.
Important to reiterate, even though
It
you
it
said it.
yeah, it that's definitely one that I can't say enough of. Especially, a lot of listeners, listening here, we're born, for those who are born in the US or first world countries, we are so gifted. It doesn't matter, you're like, oh, I'm really poor. We are so gifted just to be born where we are. For me, living and seeing so many things and being in third world countries, just being born in a first world country and then one that speaks English, really, we gives us opportunities for work almost
Right.
anywhere in the world,
Easy to
just
take for
having the
granted.
English. And it is. And I would
Yeah,
remind everyone to, go see and do what you can, because not everybody has that opportunity.
right. Out of
Um,
8 billion, we're the minority in this case for
yes,
sure.
and
So
and I
before
think we definitely take it for granted. Yeah.
now, before you go to number 2, just repeat number one more time. It's that important if you don't mind.
Explore, experience, see, and do as much as possible in this life. Make the most out of it. This is what we've got.
Beautiful. Now, I have a friend in Dubai or wherever you're going to end up. I have a nomad friend, so you just never know. Maybe we'll catch up another time. All right, next
Yes.
to your insight to live by number 2.
This one I think is really important and something that I learned last year for myself and was a game changer. To practice unconditional Self-love, acceptance, and appreciation in every single moment, no matter how far short you fall from where you want to be. And I will say for me, the unconditional love, I felt like, oh no, I've got that, But when, and I was a Tony Robbins Platinum partner this past year. And so I was at this happiness retreat, and I spent a lot of time with the speakers, Dr. Mo Gaudat and Tony Robbins spent an hour and a half on me one day, and we just were going toe to toe because growth is so important for me. But when you're so focused on growth and you're so focused on going here, then what happens is often that what is never good enough because it can always be improved upon.
Sure.
And if everything can always be improved upon, are we really truly accepting and appreciating what is and who I am in that moment if everything can be improved upon? And the answer for me, and I answered in that moment, was no. I wasn't truly accepting and appreciating myself in every moment because I was looking for everything that could be done better in myself, in what I was doing. And so I was never really fully appreciating and accepting myself. And that was something, and so I did, and here's a little practice that you can do
Sure.
that I will tell you was a game changer for me. And it just doing this practice shifted my entire outlook. And so altered states are incredibly important to accessing the subconscious. So at the end of this, Tony Robbins retreat, they had this big, long, like meditation song, like 10 minutes. And so, there's lots of these meditation songs. And so you close your eyes and you go into that, meditative state. And they were doing this thing about gratitude. And I've always had a little bit of an issue with gratitude because I'm like, okay, I'm grateful. Grateful to who? Like, what am I being grateful to?
Right.
And so I switched it around to myself. And so I did this practice. So I would suggest anybody listening, this is a powerful thing you can do. Put on like a 10-minute meditation song. Lay down, close your eyes, get into it, relax, and then start at the beginning of your life and start to thank yourself for everything. The
Mm.
good, the bad, the ugly. Because when you know who you are at your core and you know where you're coming from and what you're really about, not all the BS programming and the personality stuff, you know at your core that you are pure love and you are pure all of these, all of these things, joy and all of this. When you know what that is, then you get to love and appreciate that no matter how much you're messing it up on the surface because you know at the core what you're trying to do. And so I started at the beginning of my life and I hugged myself and I thanked myself and I was grateful to myself for every single thing, especially the mistakes.
Hmm.
And then I reached my current age and I looked at myself and I hugged myself and I said, this is a promise that I'm going to make to you from here on out. From this moment on, I guarantee you unconditional love, acceptance, and appreciation in every single moment, no matter how far short you fall from where you're trying to go.
I love
This
that.
is my promise to you. And I hugged myself and I gave myself that promise and I really truly meant it as I'm in that meditative state. And it was a game changer. It was a game changer. Not like life changed, but I changed. So, negative interactions with people or things happened in the way that I didn't want. But instead of it all sinking in and just like hitting like, oh, it hurts, it's like, okay, so that could have gone better.
Right.
What did I learn from that? Okay, I learned this, so I'm going to do better next time. Do I need to do something right now? Do I need to apologize? Do I need to do something? Okay, I've done that. So now move on.
Yeah,
Leave the
you're
past in the
creating.
past. I've taken the lesson and I'm no longer carrying the negative emotion with me. I'm not punishing myself because I'm appreciating myself. And what I was trying to do, maybe I messed that up, but that's okay because I still know who I am at my core and I get to love and accept and appreciate myself. And that's so, so, so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, look, if it's something that you found that beneficial, I'm sure most people will. It's only 10 minutes, really speaking to that foundational absolute grace that you're giving yourself that you
Yeah.
then have to hold on to moving forward and revisit so that as you're dealing with things in real time, as you described, you're going to be
No longer
that much more
punishing yourself
powerful,
for
right?
everything. Instead, you're giving yourself the pats on the back and telling yourself what a good job you did. There's no longer punishing. I mean, negative reinforcement does not work better on adults, just like it doesn't work better on kids. Positive reinforcement is always the thing. Take the lesson, learn from it, reward yourself from the positive, and reward yourself for learning from the negative. If we're not making mistakes, we're not doing life right. That's the biggest learning tool that we have. And so don't look at mistakes as something that's a bad thing. Look at, okay, I made that mistake. What did I learn from it? So now I'm up this many steps from where I was before because I had that mistake. That was a huge growth tool. If we didn't have the mistakes, we wouldn't be growing like that. So change, reframe how you're seeing mistakes, how you're seeing yourself making the mistakes, and practice that unconditional forgiveness along with it.
You're really making it very difficult for me to decide what quotes I'm going to share on social media as a result of this conversation. You've set the bar high here on these first two insights. I would like to see what comes next. Your third insight to live by, Nomad. What do you got?
This is another one that this past year is really been sinking in, and it's something that I'm still learning more and more. And I call it accept, allow, and receive all the good that's in alignment with your true self. And I will say that that's especially accepting, allowing, receiving even the good opportunities you didn't conceive of. So our society teaches us that in order to succeed, to achieve, to whatever, we have to work really hard and be super diligent and like, always like doing this. But what happens is if you're only doing that and you're focused on, okay, this is what I want, and this is how I'm going to make that happen. This is the only thing that's there. I'm going right for there. What you're doing then is you're eliminating what can be, because our current perspective of what is the best or what we think can be is always limited by our current perspective. We don't have the whole sight to be able to see what all is out there. So once you back off that gas pedal a little bit, and I'm the consummate achiever myself, and so but stressing yourself over things, and it's not say to, I'm just going to be lazy and not do anything. You get a what and a why really firmly in your head. What do I want and why do I want it? But you're flexible with how that happens. You're flexible about how that's going to look. And so then you start to do the action and you meet the people and you take the action towards what that is, but without stressing it. And you have it really clear in your mind, because then once you're in that relaxed state and you're accepting and allowing, what happens is there's some kind of a magic frequency that we start to operate on. And when you're in that magic frequency, when you're starting to put out,
right,
this is what I want, this is what, instead of I'm working really hard towards it, you start to meet these people that you didn't even know existed. You start to be presented with opportunities you didn't even know existed, but they're all in complete alignment with where you're going and are opening up that vision wider than you even perceived before. And so by accepting, allowing, and receiving and being in that state versus only I'm doing and focused and this is it, once you're in that, then you're attracting all of these opportunities that are much more in alignment with where you want to go than you even knew were possible.
wow.
If that makes sense.
Well, you really brought it. I can tell you that. That makes sense. And you didn't disappoint on insight number 3. It's really kind of building on 1 and 2. So you just raised the bar higher. And I so appreciate it. I want to wrap up here with a minute or two and speak to what I know is you have a gift to share with the audience. We're going to put this in the show notes, but I do want to mention subconsciousbiohacker.com and biohackyourmind.com. Did I get that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
But tell us just what it is that we're talking about here and people can learn more about.
So subconsciousbiohacker.com will give you some great videos and testimonials that really speak to how this works and what are some examples of people that have had the success. You're also welcome to go to International Clinical Hypnotherapy Yelp in San Diego, and you can see all kinds of reviews. But on that Subconscious Biohacker page, you'll see all kinds of that. You'll see evidence of it. You'll also see a video down the page called The Power of the Subconscious Mind, and it really breaks down the difference between the conscious and the subconscious and why we're experiencing the life that we're having. And so really goes into that even further than what I did today. And so that's really good. And it shows what my normal packages are for people around the world. Now I will say that, San Diego has a special place in my heart because they gave me my start. And so I always keep a specialized pricing for them that I'm going to open up to your listeners as well. So if you contact us, and I'm sure he'll put it in his notes, info@intlhypnotherapy.com, say you watch this podcast, we'll give you access to the special pricing so that you can get much more affordable, one-on-one options for sessions. Now the Biohack Your Mind is our audio programs that are based on what I do. So if you want to, work on stress and anxiety, and you want to do it from the comfort of your own home, it's an affordable option that actually talks to your subconscious and does real upgrading. Stress and anxiety, self-esteem and confidence, even smoking and pain control. There's all kinds, and there's even a Biohack Your Mind class where you can actually engage in and get subconscious upgrade sessions, in every single one available on there. All for very affordable. And the last thing that I'll mention is there is a special gift that you all can claim if you go to transformation.biohackyourmind.com, transformation.biohackyourmind.com. I'm giving away basically my first initial session that I do for everyone. It's an introduction to the subconscious intelligence, where you get to actually meet your subconscious intelligence. You start to create a relationship with it. You can start to interact with it, start to get answers from it. And most people find it's a really powerful thing to be connected to themselves in a way that they've never been before. And it's also something you'll be able to tap into for the rest of your life, regardless of these sessions. So, I'm giving that away for free right now. And so, feel free to check that out. I'm sure he'll put that in the notes so that you can have it. But yeah, and
Very
follow
gracious.
me on social. I give away free tips and tricks all the time. I think, you've got my
Yeah,
Instagram
we'll
and
put your handles in
Facebook.
there as well.
Yeah, the
Anybody
handles are there,
listening,
but follow me because I'm giving you all kinds of tips and tricks in your daily life to optimize your experience.
yeah, we're on every platform. So wherever anyone is consuming this conversation, at the ready in the show notes, you'll find all of this information. I'm going to confirm a couple of the other URLs that you just mentioned there, Nomad. I just want to say how much we really jam pack so much value into this conversation. Thank you so much for being my guest today and sharing your insights and wisdom with us. I'm just going to say it was fantastical.
Thank you for I love it. I love it. The more people use Nomad's dictionary, I love it. I think they're great words. Fantastical it is,
So
and I've enjoyed every moment of it. So thank you so much. I loved talking to people about this. Human potential is my passion and my purpose for being. So the more people that can tap into theirs, the more exciting that is for me.
it's evident. Thank you again, Nomad.